My name is Tanedo. I am an associate professor in particle physics, and these are my 10 essentials. So this is my planner. I believe it is a Muji B5 weekly monthly planner. It is only available from November to January every year. And for a while I would actually order these from Japan because there wasn't a nearby Muji. And I'm the type of person who likes to keep my schedule written down by hand, mainly to remind myself of what's going on. And so I keep my to-do lists, travel schedules, and let's see, I often like having little mementos from my travels. And what I like about this is at the end of every year, I can scan every page in and save it and just kind of archive it and look back on what I've done that year. I grew up in Southern California. This is going to be a long story. I grew up in Southern California where before it was called Rite Aid, we had Thrifties. And you might still know about Thrifties through its ice cream, Thrifties ice cream. And so I had this childhood memory of Thrifties being like the thing that I would do to reward myself. But as you get older, having ice cream is not the best thing for your health. And for whatever reason, I would, instead of paying $2 for an ice cream, I'd pay $2 for a Powerball ticket. My favorite bookstore in Riverside, I had to move because their lease wasn't being renewed. And I remember thinking, you know, this is such a sad thing that rather than commiserating over ice cream, which isn't good for me, I'll spend those $2, buy a Powerball ticket. Maybe I'll win $100 million and be able to save the bookshop. But if not, then I have a little memento that I was good to my body by not eating the sugar, but it's something to remember the time by. So the other thing in my everyday carry is a Leuchtturm hardcover A5 notebook. These are really nice because you can just open them up and jot down notes during a talk or during a conversation. I used to just use these for jotting down anything, and now it's kind of become where I summarize thoughts that I want to keep. And again, like my planner, this is all written down by hand. It's all ink. I prefer having the non-lined, non-grid, just a blank piece of paper. Like my planner, at the end of every notebook, I will scan them and save the handwritten derivations that I like. And what's nice about them is I cover them with stickers. So whenever I go to a new cafe or when I travel to some of my favorite places for conferences, I always grab a sticker and stick it on there so I remember where I was and what was going on in my life when I was writing down these physics notes. So recently I was visiting UT Austin and I was staying at the Carpenter Hotel, which is a really snazzy place. So I grabbed one of those. Skipper's Brew Coffee House in San Luis Obispo. So I drive up and down the coast of California to see family, and I'd stop at San Luis Obispo often. This is one of my favorite places to stop for coffee. There's a whole stack of them. It's a certain type of thing that we'll write down in a notebook rather than on a piece of paper. And it's usually when I'm in a cafe, it's usually if I'm traveling, where I have this one notebook with me, and there are things that I want to save, and it all goes in here. Sometimes it'll be a whole derivation, sometimes it'll be part of a derivation, sometimes it'll be a conversation with a colleague that I want to jot down and remember. All right, so this is my green fountain pen. This is a Lamy All-Star, fine point nib. I started using fountain pens in Cambridge when I was a master's student, so right after undergrad. It was this completely random thing where all of my colleagues, all the European students, were all using fountain pens. And I thought it was kind of cool, so I got into it. I'm very tactile, so when you're writing down things, the way that a pen feels on a piece of paper it kind of gives you some feedback. It makes your writing nicer. When you're going through an equation or doing a long derivation, you want to keep things nice and neat. And having a nice pen that just glides on a piece of paper helps a lot. It's also nice if you're writing down something for other people. So if you're writing down a derivation that you're going to scan and send to your colleagues, that's one thing that's really nice about these fountain pens. Green's my favorite color, so I really like this guy. My next item is Hagoromo Full Touch Chalk. Those of you who know, you know. And those of you who really know will recognize this is the box from when these were produced in Japan, right before the shortage, right before the chalk making machines were purchased and sent to Korea. This chalk, it's like writing with butter. I mean, it's the most smooth writing experience. I am definitely someone who prefers writing with chalk rather than whiteboards. When you're writing in chalk, you're actually working. You're actually working through an idea. It's not a finished product. So writing with a piece of chalk is nice because you can erase with your fingers and you can correct things as you go. And I think it's just naturally amenable to working on a surface rather than showing on a surface. This particular box was given to me by the graduate students at UC Irvine when I was a postdoc, and I'd just gotten my job here at UCR, and they all signed it, and the box itself is one of my most treasured mementos. Usually the lifetime of my chalk lasts until somebody drops them. And so all of my graduate students, I know which ones, who's most likely to drop a piece of chalk.
I dropped one.
Yeah, you just dropped one. I know Ian used to drop them every single time. My other bit of everyday carry is a water bottle. So this is a hydro flask. I like it because it doesn't leak, so I can put it in my bag and not worry about my papers, my electronics. I tend to drop things, so I got all the rubber thingamajiggies to keep it from denting. And yeah, it's just good to stay hydrated. I have a second water bottle that I keep in my office. I have no idea what this is, but this is a memento from the Paul and Daisy Soros 20th anniversary conference. The Paul and Daisy Soros Fellowship for New Americans is a fantastic program. It is a fellowship for people pursuing graduate school who are either immigrants or children of immigrants. It's a fantastic community, and I think I use this for my tea when I'm working. And it's nice to feel like I'm close to this community that's so special to me. My next item is a box of tissues. This is Kleenex Ultra Soft brand. It's a nice and compact shape. And one thing that I did not expect when I started as a professor is how many times people will cry in my office. Students, undergrads, grad students. I have cried in my office more than I care to admit. And I think it's important, like what this represents to me is that the field that we're in, the work that we do, what it's like to be a student doing physics, what we're doing is difficult, and it often clashes with all of the other difficult things happening in our lives. And for I think way too long, we don't actually acknowledge that things are hard and things can be really hard. And sometimes what you need is just some instance of humanity where you recognize that it's okay to feel overwhelmed. And one thing that I think really struck me was at some point, a few years into this job, I mentioned this to my colleagues, and they were all surprised that people would cry in front of a professor. And so more and more I look at this and I think it is an honor that students feel that they can be so candid with me. So this means a lot to me. Also, it's really good for like cleaning up spills when I drop tea.
Allergy season?
Yeah, allergy season. This is my lunch. So I've gotten into the habit of every weekend I'll prepare myself a nice little salad, something nice and reasonable and healthy and hearty. This has just become like something that's been something I do wherever I am. So there are physics workshops where you'll spend a couple of weeks somewhere, and I'll just bring one of these and I'll go to the grocery store and make my lunch. I have my trusty spork. I have no idea where the spork came from, but it's been really, really helpful. Nice for scooping up little bits of fruit. And I bring this up because I think being healthy is important, especially in a job where you spend a lot of your time just sitting down. So being able to put together a meal that is healthy and reasonably affordable is a nice habit, and it's time effective. These are Bluetooth headphones. These are AirPods of some generation from Apple. I like these because I tend to listen to audiobooks a lot. Having the AirPods means when I'm going jogging, or even I'm just walking from the parking lot to my office, or whatever I'm doing, I can have a podcast or a book running in the background. One thing that I've really gotten into the past few years is that since the pandemic, a lot of physics groups post their seminars online. And so now I can just have these two things in my ears, and while I'm going through my day, shopping, doing my groceries, I can keep up with what my colleagues are doing through their YouTube videos. If I'm working out, I'll sometimes use this for workout music, so something kind of uplifting. But otherwise, I rarely use these for music. When I'm in my office, on my computer, I'll put jazz or something non-vocal when I'm working. Okay, so this one's easy. This is a nice button-down shirt. This is, I believe, a made-to-measure shirt from Indochino. The other place where I like to buy shirts is Ministry of Supply, which they make these really amazing breathable fabrics, which is great when you're working in the desert like we are here at UC Riverside. And I mention this because through most of my physics career, I've been someone who just wear a t-shirt to work. And certainly as a student, as a grad student, as a postdoc, that's kind of the usual attire. But when I started as a faculty member, I started off dressing a little bit nicer because I'd be teaching. And I remember a lot of my colleagues would tease me and say, oh, now you're in front of your students, you're trying to impress your students, you have to wear a shirt with a collar. But what I've come to appreciate is that I don't dress up for my students anymore. My students, I remember it was like being a student, and you're there for the learning and not being impressed by how flashy someone in front of the classroom looks. Who I do dress for is my colleagues. And I think what's important is when you're relatively young, if you're brown, and I imagine certainly for women in a department like physics, the way you dress is directly correlated to how people perceive you in a space where there aren't many people who look like you. And so presenting myself as someone who is professional is really important, just to be given that automatic assumption that you are a colleague rather than a student, rather than a junior person, rather than someone who's invading a space that doesn't typically have people like you. So another thing that, especially in my office, that I like to have are photographs. So I'm probably the only person these days who actually has print photographs, but I like to actually have these printed out and I put them up on my wall. These are friends, family, colleagues, students, collaborators, and I put them up here just to remind myself that even though I am often here by myself typing something up or doing some work or doing some calculation, the work that we do is really part of a community. And this is my community. I really appreciate having pictures. You can see they're above my head. Like my mentors, my advisors, people who've looked after me, kind of looking down on me as I do this thing that they've supported me to do. So this is the last item. This is my UCR mug. This is actually something I had custom printed. This is the logo for this is actually the old logo for the particle theory group. And what it shows, the blue and the black is meant to kind of be a pie chart. So the black kind of represents the fraction of the universe that is dark matter. So a lot of our group works on dark matter. And so this is meant to be reminiscent of all of these pie charts that show what fraction of the energy density of the universe is dark energy versus dark matter versus visible matter. There's a Feynman diagram here. It's kind of been stylized to look like a river, to reference the Santa Ana River, which is the river which we are on the side of in Riverside. Over here is a bear, which is our logo, our mascot. There are two telescopes here for the Keck telescopes to show our connection to astroparticle physics. And then this is now the old Riverside logo. I tend to have something warm in my hands whenever I'm on a meeting. So every time I'm on Zoom, I always have this mug with me and I'm always sipping at it. What's it called? The corollary to this is that any Zoom meeting that lasts longer than about an hour, I have to run off and go use the restroom because I'm just sipping the whole time.